This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. It's been a while, and I'm joined by Adam Smith here in the bubble ahead of Conor Benn versus Joshua-Pulev on Saturday night. How are you, Adam? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Welcome to the bubble. I think this is your first time. We're quite used to it. We've had bubbles in Brentwood, in Milton Keynes, in Peterborough, and now the residency here at Wembley. So yeah, it's strange. I'm sure you found the isolation in the room, a long day, but it's good. You know, we're talking off camera about the shows, and the health and safety of the fighters and everybody is the most important thing this year, and what's been such a turbulent time for the whole world. And I think that, Matchroom have done a fantastic job. I think it looks spectacular. I think the bubble is great here. We've got into the groove now with it, and I think the fighters all feel like, they're film stars. They've got the cameras on them. The undercard fighters, the ones that are taking these opportunities. It's brilliant for them. So yeah, I think they've got it absolutely right. And I think everybody sort of getting boxing up and running again. Robert Smith and the board and all the other promoters and broadcasters deserve huge credit, because it's fantastic that we've got anything out there with no gates, and there's been some brilliant fights.
Yeah, just to echo that, really, we mentioned off camera, anybody who's putting on boxing shows at the minute, be it Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, or whoever else, deserves tremendous credit in these trying times. And it is a very impressive setup in here, as you mentioned, my first bubble. No need to brag about all of the bubbles that you've been to, Adam. But moving.
No, I'm not bragging. It's just the way of the world at the moment. It's just life. Yeah, I mean, I live 10 minutes down the road, so it's quite weird being sort of separated from the family, etc. But look, it's a must. We have to make sure that everything is safe, everything is right, and the fighters have got to go in the ring and do what they do best. And it's difficult, with training in gyms, everything, with lockdown, and these are elite athletes, and they need to be not wrapped up in cotton wool, but we need to make sure that they've got everything they need ready for battle, because they're the ones getting in there and the reason why we're all doing what we do. So they're the ones that have to be looked after the most, and it's great. And unfortunately, one or two of fights have fallen through because of the COVID, but that was to be expected, I think. There's got to be some positive tests. When Eddie tested positive in Milton Keynes the other week, and it's happened to him, it's happened to the lead promoter of the whole show, and so it's important that we go through this process. And it's funny seeing them all sort of sit at tables, sort of having their meals, and not far from each other, and some want to talk and some don't want to see each other, and it's great. It gives you good stories on the week.
It certainly does. Moving ahead to Saturday night, tomorrow night, should I say, Conor Benn headlines the event against Joshua-Pulev. Joshua-Pulev, I think we've heard once or twice this week, box Sean Porter. Tough fight for Conor, big step up for him.
It is a big step up for Conor Benn, and I think it's the right fight at the right time. He's 24. He's still young, but it's been a big year for him. He's got a kid on the way. He's got a new house. He's had a tough lockdown in many ways, because he's been sort of holed up and training, waiting for an opportunity. And with Conor, he'd fight every day of the week. So that's been hard, and balancing that with the family. So he's had a lot to think about, and there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders, not just the Benn name, but also the fact that he wants to test himself against the very best. He's called a lot of fighters out, and this is a good match for him. Joshua-Pulev, of course, we know about the Sean Porter fight. We also know what he's done before that, and it's a record which is was impressive, which is why I think Sean Porter picked Formella for his comeback opponent after the Spence fight. But look, he went the distance with him. He's tough. He's an former IBO champion. He doesn't do anything spectacularly, but he's a good, solid, all-round, long-distance fighter, and that's what Conor Benn's got to work out. Is he going to sort of listen to Tony Sims and execute a game plan behind his jab, behind his improving skills, or is he going to be the Conor Benn that the fans love and have a right old tear up? Or maybe a bit of both is needed for this on Saturday night. I think the win is the most important thing. Don't think he has to look spectacular himself or make a statement. I think it's a learning fight for him. It's an education, and I think with all the fighters on the bill, with Alan Babbage, with Fabio Wardley, all the others, this will be a gauge. On Sunday morning we'll have a better idea of how far all of them can go, because you've got to remember Conor Benn had virtually no amateur experience, or 20 fights. Fabio Wardley was a white collar fighter, and Alan Babbage, we know all about him. So I think we're going to learn more tomorrow night, and I think that we don't know how far any of them are going to go, but it's going to be fun watching.
Staying with Conor Benn, I mean, it seems to me like, he was built, I'd say, very carefully. As you mentioned, he didn't have a wealth of amateur background or experience, so he was matched accordingly, let's say, at the start of his career. This seems like quite a sizable jump, though. I mean, we've seen Chris Congo calling him out for fights. Domestically, the welterweight division is really going well at the minute. Obviously, we've seen the issues with the Chris Jenkins fight that was offered and well publicised that fight didn't happen. It seems to me that if Conor Benn beats Joshua-Pulev, he's kind of past British level, and once you're past there, you don't go back.
Well, I think you've got to look at the world welterweight division, which is ferocious, and I think that Conor at 24, even if he beats Formella on Saturday, I think he's still very much around domestic level. We don't know. Will he beat Chris Jenkins? Is he good enough to become a British champion? Is he good enough to go on and become a European and then dare we say it, a world challenger or champion? Let's stop comparing him to his dad. His dad was a phenomenal fighter, one of the greatest that we've produced, and what I like about him is the sort of the work ethic, the attitude, the way he speaks in front of camera. He's got that box office appeal, Conor, and he's got a lot of traits. Dave Caldwell and I were watching Andy Scott's interview with him on the stream earlier, and he's got so many of the same mannerisms of Nigel, and it just took us right back. But they're very, very different, and I think it's hard for Conor because he's carried that around. I think it's really good that Nigel sort of kept away and sort of being a dad at distance and a massive support to him, but somebody who's not sort of railroading him into things and putting extra pressure on those shoulders. Conor, what I like about Conor is he's a real man. He's a very, very tough, dedicated. He wants to bring the best out of himself. He's gone through some hard times. He's had these injuries already. He's had people saying you're not going to be good enough. He's had all that. Do I think he'll be ready for a move up after Formella? Not quite yet. I think there's a lot of domestic fights out there. We know the welterweight division, Josh Kelly and Congo, as you said, and Chris Jenkins. These are really good fights ahead for Conor Benn. So my advice, whatever happens on Saturday night against Formella, if he loses, then it's no big deal. He can come again because Formella's a good opponent. But if he beats Formella and he takes his career up a notch, I would just think let's probably look around at domestic level before you get carried away. And I don't think he is the guy. He'll call these fighters out, but I think he knows who he is, Conor. And I think that this is a work in progress. And it's really exciting to see how far it can go.
Yeah, it's good to hear because, as I mentioned, there are numerous amounts of good fights for him to still have on the domestic scene. You mentioned Josh Kelly, etc. Moving away from the main event, we've got Alan Babbage versus Tom Little's little brother, by the looks of things, on the scales today. Very slender at 16 stone 10. Obviously not as slender as Mr. Babbage at 15 stone 3. Interesting style clash.
Babbage a little bit heavier than he was last time as well. Everyone says he's a cruiserweight, and maybe he was making a point with that. Half the man he used to be, Tom Little. What a character! He's so lively, isn't he? You love Tom. He's fantastic around any boxing event. He's always so good-natured, and I think he feels he's let himself down a few times in his career, and he's got himself into tremendous shape. Whether that's going to be good enough to beat Alan Babbage, we'll find out tomorrow night. Babbage is a marauding, tough, strong, relentless character who, on paper should get through Tom Little. Little's been stopped before, and but I think Tom will give it absolutely everything. I think it'll be really, really exciting while it lasts. And I'm not sure we'll learn that much more about Babbage tomorrow night. Of course, he is in with a bigger guy, but we're going to learn plenty about Alan Babbage pretty soon because he wants to fight one way. That way is going to be successful for a while, but he's going to come up against the bigger, stronger guys who are going to back him up, who are going to give him problems, and then we'll find out how much Alan Babbage, really wants to win a world heavyweight title, or whether he's just, on for the ride and see how far he can go. I mean, you look at him and you look at the likes of Joshua and Fury and the elite heavyweights, and you think there's a huge gap. Even Filip Hrgović, I think. I know there's a lot of beef there from the Babbage side, but I think probably advised to stay clear of Hrgović for a while. I love Alan Babbage. He's a character. I love the savage, the alter ego. He's great. He's got this cult following because people are entertained by him. He entertains us in the ring and he entertains us out of it. And while he's being matched correctly at the moment, I think that's a great thing. But we'll see how far that style can take him. It will certainly take him places. I'm not sure whether it will take him all the way as he believes it will, but we'll see. And Tom Little hopefully will be a good test tomorrow night, and we'll get some really good action out of that one.
Scared the living daylights out of Andy Scott this week, didn't he?
He has, yeah. I think he's got Andy and me and everyone confused. I don't think he likes anyone at various times. When he's the savage, he's not the most pleasant individual. When he's Alan, he's absolutely lovely. He's great. You can sit with him for ages. And the trouble is, Rob, that he changes like with every sort of footstep he makes. It's like Alan, then it's the savage. And you're not quite sure where you stand with him. But I like that. You've got to love characters in the sport. And as I said earlier, Fabio and Alan and Connor, we don't know where this journey's going to take us. Some fighters, they've had a phenomenal amateur career. You expect them to win, a European or possibly a world title. You know where they're going to go. You sort of gauge that early on. You can't with these guys. You just don't know. But they're all very different. But they're learning, and the ones that will learn the best and the ones that get the best education and who can adapt are the ones that are going to go the furthest.
Moving on to Fabio Wardley, as you mentioned there, returns to the ring against somebody we're all very familiar with now, Richard Lartey, who's come over and, of course, boxed Daniel Dubois, Nathan Gorman. Good step up for Fabio Wardley and, in theory, a good style matchup for him.
Yeah, I like the fight that he had with Daniel Dubois, actually. I think Daniel Dubois is a great fighter, and I'm really looking forward to the battle with Joe Joyce next week. It really should find out more about Dubois, but also, Joyce, if he can hang in there, that could be very, very dangerous late on. So really looking forward to that fight. But yeah, Dubois-Lartey was a good fight. He came to win. He gave him one or two issues, and then Dubois got rid of him. That's the sort of fighter you want. You want someone who comes in and gives it everything. You don't want someone who's going to back off and run, or not have ambition. And then he had the distance fight with Gorman, which was fine. So yeah, I expect Fabio Wardley to come through this. I think the key, though, on Saturday night for Wardley is to get some really competitive rounds, and I think that's what we will get with Lartey. I think he'll be right in his face. He's bigger than him, probably stronger as well. But Wardley is an improver, and he's a good guy as well. I like his tone on camera. I think he's got real potential, and he's not the sort of fighter that's going to brag about things. He knows what he is. He's a white collar fighter who he went into the gym to get fit. They tempted him into having a fight, and he got hooked. And it's great. And he did a good number on Simon Vallily in Fight Camp. And listen, if he can stop Lartey tomorrow night, even if it's not as quick as Daniel Dubois, then that's a real statement, I think. And he's an English champion, and maybe Dubois, winner of Dubois-Joyce, moves on, and there'll be a vacant British title. I could see Fabio Wardley challenging for that next year, should he come through tomorrow night.
Those are the heavyweights that are on the card. Of course, we were expected to be joined by another heavyweight who is now retired from the sport. The White Rhino, Dave Allen, called time on his, wouldn't quite call it glittering career, but storied career in the ring. I know Dave won't mind me saying that. Yeah, the right decision.
Glittering personality is what Dave Allen is. Right decision, if that's what he feels. None of us are here or there to tell fighters to retire. That's their business. They know themselves better than anyone. I think he sat down with his sister. I was here in the bubble with him 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he missed out on a fight, and he was very lively, and he wanted another fight very quickly. So obviously something's happened since then. He obviously went back and had a long think about it. But if he's getting hurt in sparring, then that's the right call. I think Dave has been a great cult figure on the circuit. I think we've all known what he was all about, that he was never going to go, a long, long way in the sport, but he was always going to give us great value for money. He was a terrific sparring partner at the beginning, and he's given some great nights. Who thought he'd top a bill against Lucas Brown, and what a body shot he delivered that night. So I think after the David Price fight, there was a lot of people that thought, let's keep our eye on him, because he's such a nice guy and he's such fun to be around, and you want him around all the time. So I'm hoping that he could become a trainer or a manager or something and stay in the sport. I actually had an hour or so with him just chatting boxing, and his knowledge is phenomenal. We went back to the great fights with Gatti and Ward and lots of Naz stuff. He loved Prince Nassim, and I think Dave's got a wealth of knowledge and experience from being in there either in sparring or in the ring with some of the very best, and I think he can inspire a lot of young kids, not just in the sport but in life. So I'm really hopeful that Dave can stay around the sport, and he's a really good guy, and we'll miss not having him in the ring, but let's hopefully we have him on the safe side.
Spoke to him this morning. He told me to ask you about getting him a job.
I thought he might. He's always said that. And listen, he's great, isn't he? He's great on camera. So I'm sure we can we can look into that, Rob. I just like him on the circuit. I look at Darren Barker, who spent a bit of time with Dave, and Darren is just such a happy guy. He's such a fantastic sort of role model for a life after boxing. Because he's got some structure, he's got some work from Matchroom, he's got other things in his life. New dad again, and I don't know. You want fighters to be happy, and I think that you see Dave and you just want him to do something which is going to be, going to keep him structured, keep him busy, but also, that's going to help bring maybe the young generation on. So I'm sure he can do a couple of stints for us, but I think more importantly, I think he should be thinking about how he can help the young out there. It's a difficult time for everybody, and especially with the sort of, apart from the elite, the gyms shut, and, fighters, young kids not really, having places to go. And I think, honestly, that Dave can really help out in that sort of area, and I hope he puts his mind to it.
While you're discussing that about the current state of not just boxing or sport indeed, but the world, yesterday a lot of government money came out, none for boxing. Just your thoughts on that?
Yeah, disappointing to see, and I think that I talked to Eddie briefly about it, and it's a real shame, isn't it? Because we know that the grassroots and the small halls at the moment and everything is pretty much shut down, and we've got a fantastic amateur setup at the EIS, and there's going to be some great men and women going to the Olympics in Tokyo, and they do need funding. There's money that's needed in the grassroots, and you look at the smaller promoters, the fighters that some are lucky enough to get on these cards now, and I think BT are putting on a lot of cards, Frank's putting on a lot of cards. That's fantastic. It's great what Eddie's doing, and around the world it's great that we're carrying on with it. But the one area two areas that are not are the sort of more small hall fighters, and also the young, the kids, and the ones that need to be in those amateur clubs and amateur gyms. And it's a disappointment, and I'm hoping that maybe we could. We can battle back against that and club together and maybe put some pressure on, because I'm sure that's not something Robert Smith would have wanted to hear either.
Does the fact that we, as a sport, we lack an overseeing governing body, of kind of a FIFA-type governing body that can govern the sport, does that go against us when things like this happen? Where does the money go? If somebody's making money available to boxing, where does it go? Does it go to the British Boxing Board of Control? Does it go to England Boxing? Where does it go?
That's the jigsaw, isn't it? And always has been with boxing politics. The governing bodies, you've got promoters everywhere around the world, you've got different jurisdictions, different boards. We love the British board, they're the best, they're fantastic, and I'm sure that they would be instrumental in this. But yeah, you're right. You've got those different areas, and it's very hard to sort of where would that money go? But I'm sure it can be spent very wisely. And I know that you hear some of these the young undercard fighters on some of these fight camp shows, some of these shows that have happened since the lockdown, and they're just they're so grateful for these opportunities, because they know, and they've kept in shape. They've kept in really good mental and physical shape through lockdown. I bet you anything, you did a survey about every sport, I bet the fighters have kept themselves in better condition, mentally and physically than virtually any other sport. And I think they should be rewarded for that. And at the moment where we can't get, the grassroots and the small hall shows out, and the young are not allowed to sort of get into gyms and train, they've got to be helped out. Otherwise, we're going to lose that generation. And look at the inspiration that that AJ and everybody has made over the last few years since London 2012. Katie Taylor last weekend, 2 million views, across. But we put that out on all the platforms. This is fantastic. And Tyson Fury, what he did when we last saw each other in Vegas for the against Wilder. These are great stories, and what Tyson went through, and these are told to the kids, and the kids now want to be like them. They look up to their idols, their heroes, and they see a way of changing. Can I be the next AJ? Can I be the next Katie Taylor? And but we do need help. They do need help at this time, and but then a lot of people in the world do. It's a very tough time, and the quicker we get the vaccine sorted, and the quicker we can get sport back properly with the crowds, and not just the money, the gates, but the crowds. People are missing going to sport. It's great that we can show it on the television, that we can sort of keep the nation's hopes up and keep them energized. But ultimately, there's nothing like going to a fight or to a football match or something, and the kids need that, and everybody needs it. So it's going to take time, but hopefully Eddie can certainly battle back against what's been said.
Is it going to take kind of members from both sides of the street, so to speak, to get together and try and sort this out? I mean, you've mentioned Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Katie Taylor, Eddie Hearn, obviously Frank Warren over at Queensberry and BT Sport. The big profile names, the people who have the pull, the clout, so to speak, to come together and kind of work out why this is not happening and try and bang the drum for some investment in boxing? Or is it part of a wider thing that we need to really look at how the sport is structured?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it really is. It's up to, there's conversations now going on. The much vaunted Eddie and Frank meeting. But, it's... I spoke to Frank Warren a few times during lockdowns and stuff this year, and he said, look, we're all in this together, and we've all been dealt the same cards, and we've got to work together. And I know that there's rivalries and there's businesses, but ultimately, the most important thing is to keep boxing going. And I think that they've done a fantastic job, all of the promoters on both sides of the pond. I really do, and obviously the Sowlands too, and other smaller ones. But I think they really have. If you look at some of the fights that have been made, from Lopez and Loma, and you've got Errol Spence and Garcia coming up, and we've seen Leo Santa Cruz. Who'd have thought that knocked out like that by Gervonta Davis. We've had great fights, Kelbrook and Crawford. You've had Usyk Chisora here, White Povetkin. You've got AJ and Pulev to come, Katie Taylor, Pursoon. Loads of really top level fights and some cracking action. I think everybody's done everything. I mean, Tebbutt Joyce is one of the fights for me, one of the fights of the year. I can't wait for it next week. It's a shame Tyson Fury won't fight the week after, but there's been some terrific fights on domestically and world level, and I think that everybody deserves a lot of credit for that. I think that that's gone, with no gates. And we're putting Sky Sports box office events on, big fights with no gates, and everybody having to adapt. Whether you're a fighter, whether you're a broadcaster, whether you're a promoter, whether you're a trainer, whether you're the board, whoever you are, everyone has to adapt. And it's been a real tough time, but it's been an educational time for everybody. And hopefully when this world gets back to more of a normality, we can look back at this period and be proud of what we did for our sport. And then I'm sure everybody will get back, with their own interests. But I think, yes, I think people can come together. And I think there has been that in the last few months, that at least there's been communication, conversation, and respect as well.
You mentioned that much vaunted meeting between Eddie and Frank. We are still waiting for it. I know COVID interrupted the initial date that they'd put in the diary. Doesn't seem to me, my own personal opinion, that it looks very close to happening. We see Lerone Richards move over from Queensberry yesterday. Eddie, being Eddie, puts out "Welcome to the big leagues," which I'm sure Mr. Frank Warren and those at Queensberry were not particularly pleased about. Is that going to happen? Do we need that to happen for the good of the sport in this country?
I know Eddie wants it to happen at some point. I don't know whether it will. I know Frank wants it to happen. I think of course it's good. It's good for boxing. They've both got great stables. There's some big fights that they can make between them. And of course the biggest one is Fury Joshua, Joshua Fury, however you look at it. They both think they've got the A side in that, and they're the two greatest heavyweights in the world. Whoever your favourite is, whoever you pick to win the fight, it's the fight that's got to happen. And if we get a couple of them, maybe three, wouldn't it be brilliant? And with boxing politics, we don't know. AJ's got to beat Pulev. Fury's got to get back in the ring. There's mediation. There's Alexander Usyk involved. There's, a few months ago it sounded like it was all done and dusted, but we know what it's like in heavyweight boxing, and everyone's looking after their own personal business and personal agendas, and of course that's absolutely right. But I'd like to see some of the matches that they were talking about a few weeks ago, Frank and Eddie. I mean, probably top of the list would be an Anthony Yarde, Joshua Buatsi meet, but there's loads of others. Maybe Dubois, if he wins, can go and fight one of Eddie's big heavyweights. There's Chisora, there's Usyk, there's Dillian White. There's loads. There's some really great fights to make out there. Yes, so as a broadcaster, and I'm sure BT would feel the same. I'll be really happy for them to meet up, and I'd like to come in for the pudding and see how it went. Will it be sushi? What would it be? What's Frank's favorite? I don't know. Frank's a great winer and diner, isn't he? And Eddie loves his sushi, loves his food. I'll tell you what, you'd love to be there, wouldn't you? What they're going to have. They'd try and outdo each other with the food, that's for certain. What wine would they drink? It'd be fascinating, wouldn't it? And we'd all be sort of, knocking at the door and trying to peer through the windows and see like that. I'd like to see it happen. It will be, and I'm sure it will happen at some point. But both of them have got to, get it into their diaries and make sure it does.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who picks up the bill in that one, I think, as well.
They'll probably be fighting for it, just like in the first dates restaurant. The first dates restaurant's the man's meant to pay, and then suddenly you get that awkward moment where he doesn't really want to pay, or he only wants to pay half. And the nice lady sitting opposite is going, well, hang on a minute, and there's that sort of awkward moment. I think they both want the bill paid beforehand to get the upper hand.
I'm willing to pay the bill if I can film it. Let me just put that out there.
We all are.
Yeah. Moving on, Anthony Joshua versus Tebbutt. Today we were greeted with the news of a $24.95 price point. Now, we did an interview with Eddie Hearn about 12 months ago. He said Joshua Ruiz 2 was one of the biggest heavyweight fights of a generation, hence the extra £5 from the £19.95. Tebbutt versus Anthony Joshua is a mandatory defence. Where did the £24.95 price point come from?
Listen, it's the business that we're in. It's a Sky business. It's a business decision, and that's all it is. I think what you've got to look at, Rob, is the fact that there is no gate. There is no way we can get a crowd for any of these fights, and that's a massive difference. 90,000 people came and watched AJ against Vladimir Klitschko at Wembley. You think about the gate for that. You think about the gate when we were there in Vegas for Fury and Wilder. It was, I think they were saying at the time, Todd Tebbutt told me, the biggest or the second biggest heavyweight gate of all time. It was enormous. Anyway, the millions that they get from the gate is no more. They couldn't make Tyson Fury against Agit Kabayel or anyone for December the 5th. Now, there's mediation going on, but was there, money issues as well because there's no gate? Quite possibly. Everybody's having to adapt. Everybody's having to look at the situation, and you've got to find a way of making these big fights work. This is what's going to make this big fight work. Anthony Joshua against Tebbutt is a huge fight. It's the biggest after the Fury Wilder of the year. It's Anthony Joshua's return to the ring after he's become a two-time heavyweight champion of the world, after he got his revenge out in Saudi against Andy Ruiz. And unfortunately, you just got to look at each and every one. There's a lot of considerations that go into this. And, we always say with box office events, if you don't have to get it. If you want to get it, we'd love to have you with us. We'd love to have you watching it. And I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in Anthony Joshua, A, returning to a ring, B, in Tebbutt, who's a dangerous opponent, only ever lost once for a long, illustrious career, good amateur as well, to Vladimir Klitschko many, many years ago. He's been in with everybody, Chisora, Hughie Fury, he's beaten everyone that's been put in front of him. He was meant to fight Joshua a few years back, and Carlos Takam came in at short notice. It's a really good fight. It's a really good fight. It's a big fight. It's a prized fight. And we just hope everybody tunes in and watches it because, we don't have the White Povetkin fight this week. So that's a box office event that's been delayed. Lots of Sky Sports shows. Conor Benn. Then we've got the Golden Contract we're finishing. We've got Billy Joe Saunders and Martin Murray as well the week before Joshua. Lots of fights on Sky Sports. This is a box office event. It's a big event. We believe people will want to watch it, will want to tune in. And that's the business we're in. And I think, would people rather have the fight on or not have the fight? It's their choice. And we hope they choose to watch because we hope we'll put the biggest sparkle and production we can possibly put in, with no crowds, with no atmosphere. It's very difficult, but it's very difficult for the fighters. They want to fight, and they're taking massive changes. Let me tell you, the fighters, to get out there. And I think the answer is pretty evident. There's no gate at the moment, and I'm sure that's exactly what Eddie said.
I haven't spoken to Eddie yet. I will speak to him today about it. It may not be a case of wanting to watch the fight. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people who would want to watch the fight, but obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic. It may be a case of people not being able to afford the fight. We've had pay-per-view fights, an extra £5 at a time when money is tight, unemployment, furlough schemes. We've seen Tyson Fury, who is, by all intents and purposes, depends on what you listen to. They couldn't get the money together, so he's not fighting this week. I guess what I'm saying is it fair to ask fans to draw into their pocket for £5 more for a conventionally working class sport in the middle of a pandemic?
It's a fair question, Rob, and I totally get it, okay? There's a lot of problems out there at the moment, and everybody, has got their own issues and their own things to deal with, and the most important thing is that everybody gets through as safe and as composed as possible through a very turbulent time. We've all got elderly relatives that we're worried worried about. We've got people that we know that have been affected with the COVID, that people have been very ill, people who have lost family members. You know, that's the reality is that we are going through a pandemic and it's extraordinarily tough. Okay, we're trying to get boxing back. We've brought it back and we're pleased about that. And we think that's put a smile back on people's faces that we've got not just boxing, but remember, we've got a huge arsenal at Sky, Premier League right at the top of it, Formula One, we have the Masters in golf last week, huge cricket, loads of stuff is happening. And to get all that back is obviously very difficult. You know, there's a lot of finances involved. It's a business and we want to entertain. So, you know, would I like everybody to watch Anthony Joshua come in and watch him? Of course I would, you know, but that's not the business. You know, the fighters need to get paid. Everybody needs to you know, and these big fights cost a lot of money. And I say, go back to it without a gate. It's not impossible. We could just not have it. And then AJ wouldn't fight, Pulev wouldn't fight, people wouldn't have the opportunity to watch the Sky Sports box office event on December 12th, which is going to be fantastic because it's Joshua back in his mandatory fight with the possibility of Fury down into 2021. And it's a huge opportunity to see, you know, one of our greatest sports people fight, one of our greatest sports people appear. And it's not just the fight, it's the whole week where, you know, it's going to be a fantastic build-up as always. And, you know, it's a choice. It's not ideal, but it's a choice. And, you know, really hope that people will tune in on December the 12th to see AJ defending his world heavyweight belts that he went out to Saudi Arabia. He beat Andy Ruiz in the rematch. He got it absolutely right. He's a two-time champion. He's a big asset for us. He's a valuable asset for us. And I think that, you know, we want to be part and we want to be watching the Anthony Joshua story. So yeah, let's hope people want to do it.
No gate, you know, factoring that in, do you accept that Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz 2 was a far, far bigger fight than Anthony Joshua versus Tebbutt?
Not really, because it's a world heavyweight title defence, and if Anthony Joshua loses to Tebbutt, people are going to be stunned around the world just like they were for the Andy Ruiz first fight. You know, people don't expect Tebbutt to pull off the shock. Tebbutt's a tough guy. I think people are underestimating him and overlooking him because he's been in boxing for so many years, and this is a huge opportunity for him, a massive opportunity. He's not going to have the crowd, you know, cheering for AJ. You know, Joshua was in the other week to watch the Usyk Chisora fight to get a feel for the atmosphere because he's, remember, used to fighting in front of huge crowds, and that's a disadvantage for Joshua. Pulev's going to come in and upset the apple cart. We saw what Povetkin did to Dillian White. We saw what Andy Ruiz did to Joshua. These heavyweights, they're not scared. They don't fear. He'll look at Joshua, and he's already said it. He'll out him again. He'll embarrass him again. He'll stop him again, just like Ruiz did. So do I think it's not as big a fight? Of course. You know, the first fight with Andy Ruiz, people were like, okay, he's going to win easily, Joshua. You know, he's going to fight wild or whatever. Then the rematch, of course, was an enormous story, just like, you know, White Povetkin. Can he come back? Can he do it? Straight into a rematch, immediate rematches. Remember Lennox going to that immediate rematch with Hasim Ratman? He didn't with Oliver McCall. Took him 2.5 years to get back in the ring. Tony Thompson, David Price springs to mind. It happened again the second time. Big ask for Joshua. Of course, it was a huge fight. Plus, it was in a completely different part of the world. It was a very different sort of fight. But, you know, look, Anthony Joshua is the world heavyweight champion. He's defending, bar the WBC, all his belts against a mandatory challenger who's only ever lost one fight. It's a huge happening. It's a big fight. And on a year like this, it's particularly big when we can't make other big blockbuster fights. I think we've got to take our hats off to Eddie Hearn and everybody that's made that fight. Look at what we've provided. You know, we've had White Povetkin with Taylor Persone, first of all, in Fight Camp. We were going to have the Povetkin-White rematch, another box office event. That will be delayed till 2021. And we've got Joshua and Pulev. We've made these big fights happen. Don't we deserve a little bit of credit for that? I mean, not looking for much, but...
Picking it up there, we ran out of cards. Time does fly when you're having fun. Just pick it up with the last question that I asked beforehand about the extra price point, the £5 extra price point, when comparing the size and the scale of the event, Tebbutt versus Anthony Joshua, to Andy Ruiz versus Anthony Joshua last year. We were told that was of the same ilk as an Ali Frazier or a Rumble in the Jungle 12 months ago, and now 12 months later we're seeing an IBF mandatory title defence at the same price.
Did we really say it was like...
Eddie Hearn said it repeatedly, yes.
Yeah, well, that's Eddie, you know, and that's not necessarily... us. It wasn't. It was a huge event, of course. It was a fight in the desert. It was actually an enormous operation, which is what it was. And the team that went over there just did a phenomenal job from start to finish to produce such an amazing spectacle, such a great show. It was a very important fight and a big night for Anthony Joshua after what happened to him in the Garden in the summer, and a lot of eyeballs on there. There was huge media contingent going out there. There were huge crowds. We don't have that at the moment. We don't have a huge media contingent who can get into the bubble or can get into ringside. We've got some media. As you found, there's that people are taking turns. It's not ideal, and there's a lot of expense going on. A lot of expense in these bubbles with the testing and with the the food and the accommodation and all that sort of stuff. And then the most important thing is there's no crowds, which is the worst thing at the moment for us, for everybody that loves boxing and loves the atmosphere and the fight fever. You want people around, and that's the big difference this year. So, look, it was a really important night last year. We see this is a really important night. Anthony Joshua's first fight of 2020. He was going to fight in the summer at Tottenham Hotspur. What an occasion that would have been. It seems a long way to maybe getting back into that, but hopefully it won't be that long if we get the vaccine sorted out and we can have crowds back in properly in next summer maybe. But it is what it is, and at the moment we're trying to battle through a number of problems to get boxing even out. There's all sorts of issues, whether people are failing COVID tests, whether the normal stuff about weight making. We had whole dramas last week on that front. We know, Rob, we know the boxing problems that we get to even get the fighters in the ring. Add to that what's happened with the pandemic, and it's very, very difficult operationally, organisation, everything, and financially as well. So with all these things, it's very difficult. Anthony Joshua fights once in 2020. This is how it is. We see it as a big fight because he's defending his world heavyweight titles against Joshua-Pulev. He's a star attraction in British sport, and you say it's a defence, but then you nod to me and say that Joshua-Pulev is a dangerous fighter.
I do think that Joshua-Pulev is being overlooked in this fight. I think he's a capable fighter, but I don't believe the fight is anywhere near on the same scale as the Ruiz rematch.
Yeah, well, do we think that the first fight with Andy Ruiz...
That wasn't what I said.
No, but the first fight with Andy Ruiz was almost overlooked because people thought Joshua would win easily. Obviously, it becomes a story, a huge story, when a fight doesn't go the way you expect it to go. The boxing world's tipped on his head, and everybody wants to see whether, Joshua is as good as we thought he was, whether he can, exact revenge on Andy Ruiz. It was a big fight. It was also a big fight because of where it was in the world. And it was a story of, could Joshua reclaim his titles? And could Andy Ruiz... Will lightning strike twice? Would Ruiz just have gone off and partied? And, all of that sort of stuff. There's a lot happening in that. Joshua-Pulev's not the same personality that Andy Ruiz is. I don't think he's had the same exposure. And I think people are overlooking him because if you look at his credentials and you know him, he's a tough obstacle, a tough opponent. Of course, Joshua starts favourite. But there's a lot of other things. The boxing world is in a state of flux at the moment because we don't know whether, Alexander Usyk's going to appear as the WBO mandatory. We don't know whether Fury's going to fight Wilder, whether Fury will fight Joshua. That's the fight we all want to see. But these are the banana skins. So I do see it as a very important fight. And you'll be telling me on Sunday, if Joshua-Pulev becomes a world heavyweight champion, well, actually, maybe it was as big as. You don't know. All these fights for the heavyweight title, especially when a British superstar is involved, are massive nights. And we don't want to miss them, do we?
Absolutely not. I just struggle to understand the correlation between AJ Ruiz won and being such a huge upset and using that to essentially justify an extra £5 price point for this fight.
And you can do that, but the world is a different place at the moment. And, as I said to you before, I would have everybody walking in and watching Anthony Joshua if they could. It's a business, and to get a fight like this over the line, people had to adapt. People had to, hard decisions had to be made. And I'm telling you, and Eddie will tell the same thing, that, to make Joshua-Pulev and to get this fight over the line, just like it was to make Usyk Chisora, which was extraordinarily tough too. Katie Taylor-Pursoon, to get that one agreed for the summer. I can't tell you how many sleepless nights, these fights are to get over the line. And I think that Matchroom and Sky are doing a phenomenal job to make sure they're happening. Again, it's down to people's choice, whether they want to choose to get the Sky Sports box office event. Nobody's forced to do anything. We just hope that they want to enjoy the Anthony Joshua story and are there for the night, because you don't want to miss it. It's the heavyweight world championship. And a lot of people I've talked to can't wait for the fight. So we hope that people do tune in. It's business, isn't it? And you've got to look at businesses, and you've got to look at that. You've got to look at America. What do they charge over there? They don't charge $24.95 or $19.95 or less. They charge much more, and they've been charging much more for a long, long period of time. So, we're always going to get criticised, but we carry on doing what we do, and we hope people enjoy that and get the entertainment value and make sure that they are indeed tuning in on the night, because Pulev is another chapter in the heavyweight history of this sport, and we'll also know whether Joshua will be ready for the Fury fight come 2021, because that's a massive fight.
You mentioned America. I mean, the difference in subscription between Showtime, for example, and Sky, there is a significant gulf.
There is a significant gulf. There's been a significant gulf with HBO, with Showtime. We've been in the pay-per-view market for a long time.
I mean, the monthly subscription. So what I'm saying is we pay a monthly subscription for Sky and then have to pay £20 to £25 on top of that. The Showtime subscription in America is nowhere near the same price as the Sky subscription in the UK.
No, does Showtime cover Premier League football? Do they cover golf?
I'm a boxing journalist.
We're talking boxing, yes. And in boxing, we know that. And I've been asked many times, Rob, over the last few weeks why we didn't do Lomachenko and Lopez, why we didn't do Kelbrook and Crawford, which we put a big bid in for. I want to do all these fights. I'd love to do all these fights. I'd love to do the Errol Spence-Garcia fight. I'd love to have done Gervonta Davis against Leo Santa Cruz, right? If I could wave a magic wand and have all my bosses on side and saying, oh yeah, I'll tell you what, we'll put all those fights on at 4 o'clock in the morning. We know where the trade fans are. The trade fans watch everything. And I am a trade fan, and I want to watch everything. But I work for a company which has it's a massive business. It's a massive corporation. The Premier League, the golf, the Formula One, the cricket, all of those, in many ways, much more revenue subscribed drivers than we are in boxing. But we have 4 or 5 nights a year where we are Sky Sports box office, and that's where we can stop a bit of traffic. That's where we can get the casual fans in as well as the trade. We want to try and do as many good trade fights as we can within the stipulations as we've got. You said at the beginning, and you said again, how good it is that everyone's doing boxing again. We put some tremendous fights on at different levels throughout the August to nearly December period. We're happy with that. Would we like to have more? Of course we would. We'd love to have done the others. We'd love to have done that. I'm not going to sit here and compare us to what Showtime do or whatever. All I know is that a Sky Sports package, with 11 channels, including Sky Sports News and predominantly football, but with all the other sports as well, boxing is a part of that. And that's where we are. It's a part of it. It's not the most important, it's a part of it. For fight fans, it's the most important. For fight fans, they want to see everything. I'd love to give them everything. It's not financially possible. It's not rational in our business. So we have to pick and choose. What we have done, Rob, is we've been there through thick and thin for 25 to 30 years now in boxing. Not one season have we missed. Can you say the same for any other broadcaster on this side of the pond? Over the other side of the pond, Showtime has stuck with it. HBO have decided to move out for a while. DAZN have come in. We wish them well. We embrace competition. We like the fact that BT came back into it. But we've had Setanta, we've had ITV Digital. Where are the BBC? Where are all this? I'll tell you what, we've stuck with it. We've found a way to stick with it. And it has been extremely difficult. We've gone from leisure centres to arenas to stadiums. We've worked with all sorts of different promoters, around the world. I speak to Araceli Villas regularly at BBC. I speak to Todd DeBerf regularly. Do I want to show their fights? Of course I do. I'm a fight fan, Rob. I'm a fight fan. I'd love to. But I also work for a company, and it's a business. And we've got to make sure that we're doing the right thing, both for our customers, which is the most important thing, and for our staff, and for our business. But the customers get the Sky Sports package. And that is football, cricket, Formula One, NFL, darts, the whole lot, as well as boxing. It's very different and difficult. Box Nation, great idea. Put boxing on all the time. It's very difficult as a business model. It's very hard because we know how many of the trade fans. Do we want more fans in boxing? Of course. But we believe the casual fans come out for the big nights. That is the AJ nights. That's the Fury nights. That's the Dillian White nights. And we put Katie Taylor on Sky Sports last week. 2 million views because we opened it up. We opened it up to everybody. Facebook and on YouTube on that. Don't get a lot of credit for that. I don't look for the credit. We get a lot of arrows fired at us, but we've stuck with boxing, and we intend to stick with boxing because we believe boxing is a great sport and we televise it brilliantly as well. So we love the competition, we love the questions, we love the, do they charge more than them and do they give more value for them? It's a subscription business. Sky, if you want Sky, you're going to have Sky. If you want to pay for the Sky Sports box office events, you're going to pay for the Sky Sports box office events. No one has to. It's a choice. We believe we give a great product and we do everything. There's much cleverer people behind the scenes. There's much better people behind the scenes than me, than Eddie, working at Matchroom, working at Sky, that absolutely put everything into making sure these shows are the best they possibly can. Do you think that I don't get them calling me up and saying, why aren't we doing Loma? Why aren't we doing Kell Brook? Why aren't we doing this? We want to do everything, Rob. It's not possible. Not enough. Loads of sweets in the jar at the moment. Not enough chances for us to do everything. We just can't. It's not possible. Callum Smith against Canelo. Wonderful fight. Great fight. Would we love to do it? Of course. It's not possible. It's not possible on our network at the moment. So you know what we do? We watch it on other people's network. That's what we do. Am I going to watch Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce and every second of that next week? You bet your bottom dollar I am. Am I going to talk about it next week? Of course I am. It's a huge fight. There's independence. We embrace the competition. We're doing our best.
Credit to you for that, because we've always spoke about fights that are on other platforms and we've always, gone into them. You certainly don't turn your nose up and push it to one side because it's not on Sky. I do appreciate that. Final one on the whole AJ Pulev story. I appreciate what you're saying about you can't have everything. You can't have Loma Lopez. You can't have Kell Brook and Terence Crawford. So, you're saving money from the budget. Why then does there need to be an extra £5 on the pay-per-view?
You're not stopping, are you?
I would like to move on, but you keep saying things, Adam, that I don't feel that I would be doing my job if I didn't ask you about.
I totally understand that. And look, it's the Sky Sports world is very different to the Sky world in many ways, okay? So, a box office event involves the whole business. That is a Sky business. That is a different sort of area than the Sky Sports regular boxing. So, we've got budgets for Sky Sports, and we work ferociously hard to make sure that we can get the best that we can out in a very difficult world. I keep going back to it. You keep asking me the question, and I keep giving you the same answer. And I want to know what Eddie says to you as well, because the no-gate scenario, the no fans coming through, is affecting sport hugely and business. And that's the bottom line here. That we could just, if we'd shut up shop and said, do you know what? Well, I'll tell you what, we'll take a hiatus. We won't do boxing for a while. Do you think Sky Sports would be really affected if we just did football and we did, golf and cricket? Okay. Box office events are great. They're great for the company. They're when everyone comes together. They're stopping traffic moments, hopefully. So if we get Fury and Joshua Fury, a couple of fights there, they'll be definitely stopping traffic. That's what we got with AJ Klitschko, just over the road here at the stadium. That night stopped traffic. It was amazing. And everybody coming together within a company working to give the customers the best possible experience they can have. That's our aim. We do it because we love doing it. We do it because we're passionate about it. We love being involved in sport. We love being involved in, televised sport. And we work the social networks and the digital networks to bring the stories and bring everything out. The crunch is here that you're going to keep asking me about the money, and I'm going to keep telling you there is no gate. Therefore, it's very difficult to even make fights happen. So if we hadn't made the fights, what would you have said? Why haven't we got boxing on at the moment? You'd have asked me that question. We wouldn't be getting a chance to see the world heavyweight champion, Anthony Joshua, in a unique scenario with virtually nobody in attendance, but everybody with the opportunity to watch it on television and around the world. You get that opportunity out of this situation of this year. I think that's brilliant having Anthony Joshua back in a ring. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Or we could not have had him fight, and we could have had a quiet time till Christmas, and then fans wouldn't have had the opportunity to see that, or they wouldn't have had the opportunity to see all of the stuff that we've had at the Wembley residency, at the fight camps, that innovation from Eddie, also what Frank's doing over at BT. The amount of shows they've done is fantastic. But they haven't done anything on the level of AJ Pulev. Joyce and Dubois is brilliant next week. It's brilliant. But they don't have Tyson Fury fighting. We do. They couldn't make that financially work. We have made it work. It's up to you whether you want to get it. And that's the truth. With no gate, there has to be considerations. We could just have had, I tell you what, AJ, let's not fight until May next year. Do you think he wants to? He wanted to be fighting. He was our studio guest for the fight camp, the last fight camp show with White Povetkin. He was ready to fight there and then that night. They're fighters. They want to fight. We need to give them the chance to go out. And the others, look at the Kane Baker stories come out of fight camp. These chances of, Katie Taylor's had a couple of fights. Dillian White would have done. They're ready. They want to fight. And in this tough time, they need paying more than anyone. Otherwise we don't get any of this sport. The fighters need to get out there and fight. We've made it happen between all of us, the broadcasters, the promoters, to make sure that boxing has gone on through very difficult times. People were saying to me right at the beginning of lockdown, the first lockdown, when's boxing back? When's boxing? I said, wait a minute. The doctors are needed. This is a dangerous sport. The doctors are needed on the front line. Let's not think about us for a minute. Let's think about what the NHS need, okay? And those great doctors and nurses and the paramedics and everyone that were putting everything in to that horrendous first wave. Now we've got it again, and people are saying, right, but we're not, this is a small part. Boxing is a small part of big businesses and big situations in the world. And we just got to sometimes just say, okay, is it terrible that Sky didn't do Lomachenko and Lopez? I mean, would we like to have done it? Of course we would. Would we like to do all the fights? Yes. But are these fights being broadcast? Yes. Is there an opportunity on different outlets, different channels, Premiere, on Fight, on all these, BT, on DAZN? There's lots of opportunities now for fans to make their choice and choose what they want to watch. The best thing is they're able to. And we at Sky back ourselves to put the best production on, to have the best fights that we can, work with the best promoter in Eddie. We've got a great relationship, and we're trying everything we can, night and day, to make it better. But there is no easy way out of this. There's no easy way through it. It goes back to the fact that you can't get fans into the arenas, into the stadiums. There is a huge hole in the budgets. We are a broadcasting house.
But that hole has to be filled by working class fans in the middle of a pandemic and not by these big businesses that you're talking about.
No, it doesn't have to be filled.
It does, because the extra £5 has come to fill this hole with no gates and the additional cost that's coming over. But that's been subsidised by fans being charged an extra £5.
But Rob, as you said, it was $24.95
for a huge once-in-a-lifetime fight, which is what it was sold as.
So when's the next once-in-a-lifetime fight?
AJ Fury.
Yes, AJ Fury, but,
If you charge $24.95 for that, Adam, I'll be delighted. But the way things are going at the minute, if Joshua-Pulev is $24.95, what price is AJ Fury going to be?
What if it was much more? I mean, would people want to pay for it? That's their decision. It's a huge, huge fight. But to get it on, there's got to be a lot of things that are looked at. And when there is, if there's a massive gate, if there's a big gate and there's a lot of people there and the finances those finances can help, it depends. Where's that fight going to land, Fury-Joshua? At the moment, with no crowds in Britain, where's that going to go? And the key for us is as well to keep these fights at 10, 11 o'clock British time as well. That's not easy too. Some of them might be at 4 in the morning. We've done everything we can over the last couple of years to make these at the right time for the British fans. Only AJ Ruiz one, which was the middle of the night, was a difficult one, and it's important for us to really sort of home in on this, on sort of as much as we can. And look, it's not the homecoming we wanted for Anthony Joshua, which would have been at Tottenham. It's not that, which would have been incredible at that massive stadium, that phenomenal stadium. It's not, but it is a homecoming. It's a homecoming. He's fighting in London. He's fighting in, what now, how many weeks? Not long. It's happening in 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Ish. It's this
The
bubble.
whole year's flown by.
It's this bubble life. We've got Conor Benn this week. We know we've got Dubois Joyce, and next week then it's into Billy Joe. Yeah, it's another 3 weeks. But in 3 weeks' time, we're going to get the world heavyweight champion, or one of them, in Anthony Joshua. Shame we didn't get Tyson Fury as well the week before. But we've all got to get excited about AJ being back in the ring. So AJ is back in the ring against Pulev. And for me, you judge it on what we've got around us at the time. Did we know in Saudi that we weren't going to have AJ back in the ring until July, that Tyson Fury wouldn't fight after February this year? Let's be honest, Rob, we didn't know. So we've got to adapt. There's changing times, and decisions are made. And what we do know is that AJ is fighting Pulev on December 12th. And we hope, Rob, that everybody tunes in to watch the next chapter in Anthony Joshua's career. Can Kubrat-Pulev cause the upset? Can he make the Fury-AJ fight even further away? We don't know. It's all going to happen on December the 12th. You're going to be watching it. People out there are going to be watching it. And I'm sorry that they can't all come in and watch it for free. You know, wouldn't that be brilliant in an ideal world? It's not an ideal world at the moment.
It certainly isn't. And if you are looking to watch Anthony Joshua versus Kubrat-Pulev, just a quick reminder, if you haven't heard it once or twice in this interview, it will be available on Sky Sports box office for $24.95. Adam Smith, always a pleasure catching up with you. Do appreciate your time and taking my questions. Real pleasure. Speak to you soon.
No problem at all, whenever.
Cheers, Adam. Thank you. Go on.